isn't easy, but experiencing it is. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat with the industry's leading sim racing game. Drive on laser scan replicas of the greatest racing circuits from around the world. Go head-to-head against other drivers chosen by skill-based matchmaking to ensure competitive racing at every level. Compete across all your favorite series. In officially licensed cars, engineered to deliver the most accurate driving experience possible. Join a race or host your own with players from across the globe. Race against the computer or in a league with friends. Feel the thrill behind the wheel. Visit iRacing.com.
This circuit requires a combination of composure, bravery, and skill. It is the place where legends are born. More to the point, it is one of a small amount of hallowed venues that once every year hosts a twice around the clock adventure. Good evening everybody, and welcome along to the Freedom Motorsport Alliance Prototype Challenge Series for GTP and LMP2. And this particular week, well, it's May the 7th. It is, of course, the Circuit de la Sarthe, Le Mans. The 24 hours of Le Mans circuit will host for 60 minutes an adventure that the drivers will be doing at high speed with speeds of over 200 miles an hour. Neither their choice of GTP, LMP2 machinery. Hello everybody, welcome along to the Race and Nexus Broadcast Network up here in the Global Broadcast Centre trackside. It's Alex Goldschmidt, joined in the booth as always by my compadre from across the pond from Canada. Very good evening, Marshall Crocker. Marshall, good to have you alongside me. What a circuit it is. And I think as the great John Hindle would say, if you don't like Le Mans, you've definitely got a rock for a heart.
That's a great way to put it. Yes, some of the iconic stories in racing history, the most iconic, sometimes the final chapters of those stories are often written here at Le Mans. It's one that, while many a race, many a 24-hour endurance race or a marathon in their entirety, this track is a marathon each and every lap. I'm so excited. You talk about a challenge from a driver's perspective. It doesn't get much tougher. These cars are going to be trimmed out. They're going to be made for top-end speed. But the problem is, some of the toughest corners, some of the most difficult low speed, high speed, medium speed, a little bit of everything, some of the toughest corners on the circuit all take place right here. Should be a great one. We've got some title battles going down to the wire. Should be a great day and a great venue for a great chapter and a great story.
Yes, indeed. But there is some breaking news we need to share to you folks at home. All remaining rounds have now been designated by poll. They will be 60 minutes for every single race. That is from now at Le Mans right the way through to Watkins Glen, which still stays as a double points finale. So practice starts at 8 p.m. Eastern, green flag at 9:30 p.m. Eastern. So that means Silverstone now goes to 60 minutes. The Watkins Glen double points finale, still double points, but it's 60 minutes. So there's going to be more pressure on these drivers to perform. Let's have a look at the scores on the doors in the GTP and the LMP2 classes. Well, Brock Morris, once again, he ruled at Hockenheim against chief rival Anthony Jenkins, and it is not that much between them. 13 points is the battle between the top two in the GTP, who seem to be swapping victories more times than musical chairs being taken away at somebody's birthday party. But nevertheless, could it be Jenkins? Could it be Morris? Could somebody else upset the apple cart? We could see that Brian Scott, who rounds out the top five, currently fastest in time qualifying at the moment, as we are just under 5 minutes away from checking in that. Jay Davis and Chase Matsko round out your top four. Anthony Sorrentino, Ryan Peters, Faraz Ibrahim, Evan Gilmet and Zach Tankersley round out the top 10. Jeremy Escherman still hangs on to a 20-point advantage in the LMP2 division ahead of Gustavo Ferraro. Decio Lima, Broughton Jones, and Puerto Rico's Ignacio Arroyo round out your top 5. Macon Ginzoni, Aaron Sanford, Brandon Anderson, Jody Nielsen, and Eduardo Sales round out your top 10. Let's have a look at the circuit itself. It is 13.626 kilometers long, 38 corners, and has been in operation for over 1 century. This is going to be very, very crucial, especially going down the Mulsanne Straight through the Une Diel, the chicanes as they're more commonly known. And then you've got places such as Mulsanne Corner, Indianapolis, Arnage, the Porsche curves, the Ford chicane, and even the famous or infamous and fearsome at times Tetra Rouge, where over a decade ago we lost one fantastic Danish driver in the name of Alan Simonson one particular year at Le Mans. But the person that rules the roost in terms of being the Mr. Le Mans of today, the first ever Mr. Le Mans, was Belgium's Jackie Ickx. 6 24-hour Le Mans victories, but of course in modern day that would be eclipsed at some point, and that man that did that, Denmark's Tom Christensen. I've had the pleasure of meeting both individuals. Jackie actually most recently at the Italian Grand Prix last year when he went round in a historic display at the Autodromo Nazionale di Monza at the Gran Premio d'Italia at Monza in his 1970 312T that he raced as teammate to Argentina's Clay Regazzoni that year. But let's take you trackside here at Le Mans as we are 2.5 minutes away from the end of timed qualifying. A lot of drivers have already put in their laps, particularly in the GTPs. There's Ignacio Arroyo, the Puerto Rican teammate of current points leader Jeremy Eshelman, who has done nearly 3 laps, but unfortunately none have been registered due to lap times being disallowed in timed qualifying. And, well, that is going to put Jeremy down to the bottom of the timesheets. But the big thing here at Le Mans, Marshall, it's not about where you start. It's where you finish that is crucial.
It's completely true. You don't get many easier tracks to make your way up through in terms of track position over the course of an hour than Le Mans. You talk about the Mulsanne Straight, you're spending almost a minute and a half straight on a straightaway, on the throttle, with the slipstream, ultra powerful. There's no difficulty in getting by cars if you can keep up your speed, but you consider corners like the Porsche curves where it's going to be such a tough time, as Ignacio Arroyo puts himself up there with a good time up to P6. It's such a tough time to run in the dirty air, to maintain your position, to not burn the tires up. It's one of those tracks that, yeah, it's not too hard to avoid staying behind another car for the entire race, and you definitely want to make sure you don't, because the more of the race you can spend in the clean air, the more of the race you can save tires. But if you want to talk about strategy, not the worst thing in the world either there, Alex, to be spending a large portion of the race behind other drivers on the Mulsanne Straight. Use the slipstream, save the gas, and you consider, you're seeing up there on the board, current pole time of 3:27.8. This is a very long lap time here. If you save fuel, if you're able to save 1 full lap worth of fuel in the pits, that could play a huge effect today. Strategy is going to be magnified with how long this lap is.
Yeah, let's take a look at the air and the track temps at the moment. 68 degrees Fahrenheit, 91 on the track at the moment, and it's partially cloudy, so 33 degrees Celsius track, 20 degrees air, 61% humidity, partially cloudy here at Le Mans. As you can see, clouds in the sky above the Mulsanne Straight, as we see Broughton Jones in the 444, who's currently on his second lap here in qualifying as the timer does hit 0. Now, that means that the session quickly shifts around. 15 minutes, folks, are up here at Le Mans. We are not giving our drivers much opportunity to have any respite, but it is going to be the 2x2 rolling start. Brian Scott puts it on pole position ahead of Eduardo Sales, so Porsche versus Ferrari on the front row. Anthony Jenkins and Sasha Andrich round out the top 2 rows. Jay Davis will start 5th, and he'll have it's going to be Nathaniel Fryman alongside in the leading LMP2 car. Fryman, very, very quick indeed in the number 20 Delara. Then it's Anthony Branco and Decio Lima, who will round out row 4. Row 5, Macon Ginzoni and Gustavo Ferraro, who we have seen win, who finally won a victory last time out last week at the Hockenheim Ring. They complete the top 10. Ignacio Arroyo and Alexander Berta round out the top 12 drivers on the grid. We are set to have 18 in total. Brock Morris and Chase Matsko all the way down in 13th, 14th position, completing row number 7. Then we head to row 8, and it's Curtis Kienecker and Jeremy Escherman rounding out that row. And then we will have 2 final drivers completing the grid, Christopher Pugliese and Broughton Jones bringing up the rear of the field. What a display of prototype machinery we have here at Le Mans. 18 drivers set to go into battle for 60 minutes around this hallowed circuit, which is, which I've had the opportunity to drive a little while ago. I did an event called the Rotax International Trophy, the Le Mans International Karting Circuit, and that circuit is actually based right inside Porsche Curves and Karting, and they had a track day going on. Funnily enough, I'm heading to that circuit twice again this year, so I might be able to go down the Mulsanne Straight at about 80 kilometers an hour, which is actually the the speed limit down the Mulsanne, and you don't actually go through the Hunaudière, you actually go straight on. But this is going to be an interesting one because that 963 hybrid, the number 85 of FMA's Brian Scott, has been absolutely rapid round the circuit here in qualifying. He put it on pole, and he's here to make a statement. He's going to basically say to Messrs Jenkins and Morris, guys, we ain't going to have all the wins come your way this season.
He's going to be such a fascinating component in this race tonight because we talked about the points. It's Brock Morris and Anthony Jenkins really should be the title battle, and based on the season we've seen so far, Alex, they really should be the 2 dominant guys on pace, but Brian Scott was almost 3 seconds a lap clear in practice. He was unbelievably fast over the rest of the field. P2 in that practice session was Brock Morris, but we've talked about it. Brock Morris is going to start from the back of this field here of the GTPs. Luckily for him, only 8 cars in the class tonight. That is P6 outside row 3, but you talk about how much this could get spread out here in the early phases, Alex. We've seen it all season. The cold tires, the field spreads out a little bit as they get comfortable. Brock is going to need to go in the attack tonight if he doesn't want to give up points, and this is going to be a huge opportunity for the gentleman there in P3. Anthony Jenkins needs to really get on his horse here at the beginning because 11 points doesn't sound like much in the title battle, but the way this point system works, the way that, you know, each position is only worth 1-2 points with a couple bonus points here and there, you really need to get off to a hot start here in the last part of the season if you're Jenkins, if you want to control your fate for the championship.
All I can say is, Sasha Andrich, thank you so much for bringing the Apple computer livery onto the cars, onto the Porsche 963 hybrid, the 313 in the Penske Porsche Motorsport colours. But now we get set and ready. Hold on to your hats, folks. This is going to be a roller coaster for 60 minutes here for the FMA Prototype Challenge Series. It will be the turn of the pace car to pull into pit lane. It's down to Scott and Sales to control the pace. Out of the final corner, we are green at Le Mans as Brock Morris gets a black flag penalty. Chase Matsko does as well. That's probably for jumping the start, maybe. And Matsko's had that quickly expunged. Morris has had that quickly expunged. But again, straight away, look at this. Jenkins has made his move early. He's got through on Sales, who's tripping over his own shoelaces going through the first couple of corners as they go underneath the Dunlop Bridge and into the S's for the first time. And look at this. Brian Scott has started to pull away early, but the speed of that 5.5 litre naturally aspirated flat plane crank caddy is going to start roaring into the distance if he can get the opportunity. But meantime, Anthony Barranco is in the lead. Now it's Macon Ginzoni through the Dunlop S's, and Barranco retakes the race lead. It's going to be a right-hander coming up. They are squeezing on each other towards Tetra Rouge, and this is going to be crucial. Can Ginzoni take it to the inside? Yes, he can. Barranco drifts wide. Decio Lima looking in the inside. Nathaniel Fryman is going to make it 3 wide out of Tetra Rouge. That is brave from the number 20 as they now go hammer down onto the Mulsanne. And look at this, Fryman's still to the outside. Oh my goodness, already we got a 60-minute race, gentlemen, and you're battling like it's the last lap already. But look at this, Gainzoni still to the race lead. Barranco's going to stick ahead, but he has to straight line the chicane. That is going to be a slowdown penalty for Barranco as Decio Lima takes P2, Fryman up into third. But that was such a close moment. And here we see Curtis Kinnicker trying to make his way through the LMP2 traffic. He's way back down the order, and there comes the BMW M V8 hybrid of the man from Canada. Going to try and get through on the number 20 of Nathaniel Fryman. And Fryman from Middleton in the USA is trying to close in on Decio Lima and Macon Ginzoni. We're right on board with the number 20, Delara P217. Of course, there's been big news quite recently in the last few weeks where the ACO have announced that the LMP2 division will have a major shift. Still will be the same type of chassis, the similar types of chassis. So Delara, Orica, but a new engine will be brought in as Chase Matsko gets through on Jay Davis, who has to serve a slowdown penalty, and Brock Morris, he's got to try and get through. He does get through, and that is going through into Indianapolis. And the man from Lapeer, Michigan, trying to close on in, but you can just see as there is Erie, Pennsylvania's Christopher Pugliese in the number 420 car. But yeah, this is not what Brock Morris wanted at this moment in time. He's 8.3 seconds behind Brian Scott, who is 2.2 seconds ahead and climbing away from Anthony Jenkins, as there is a drama for Puerto Rico's Ignacio Arroyo. Teammate Jeremy Eshelman has got through, and who is that into the... Oh, that is Alexander Berta in the Harlequin car that has just put it into the dusty stuff off of Indianapolis. We're going to see here, is he going to get... What's going to happen with Arroyo? Arroyo's going to... Oh, Arroyo catches the gravel, bang, straight into the barriers, goes the 207. Oh dear, that is not going to go well, and Berta lost it all on his own. Look at this, into an Indianapolis, and then into the corner, does exactly the same. Oh, we've got Cookie Monster, we've got Oscar the Grouch. Oh, it's Sesame Street. Well played, Alexander.
He wishes he was eating cookies. Instead, he ate a curb. That did not go the way that first lap was hopeful for Alexander Berter. Guy who had a really good night on Monday nights in the GT3, and Christopher Pugliese similarly having some struggles here in the early stages. And we've seen a lot of that this season, Alex. These LMP2 cars, such a tough time getting up to speed, getting comfortable with the tires, especially in that early phase, and with a track that is so demanding after you're trimmed out so low on downforce for the straightaway. Once you hit a corner for the first time in a while, you'd be surprised how tough of a time it could be for your tires to find grip. And Curtis Kienecker continues to be in this pack here as a GTP. He's still factored in. He looks like he's racing here with this lower class. It's hard to tell what to do here if you're a guy like Fryman and Lima. What do you do with a guy around you that you know is in a higher class, you know that has the raw speed, but just continues to sit in your battle?
Well, Koenig's first lap was a 4:05, as now we're seeing Brock Morris close in on Sasha Andrich well, no, he's trying to close in on Sasha Andrich, and Andrich is about 2.7, 2.8 seconds up the road. And look at this, Lima versus, yeah, well, Koenig gets through. I mean, Curtis Koenig, I think, might be a little bit out of his depth here, because now he's got two. Oh dear, look at this. You don't see that very often. A hypercar being passed by two LMP2s. Fryman and Lima make that. I think there was a little bit of piston net code involved, and Nathaniel Fryman has just spun it around, and that has tumbled him down to 7th position. We're just going to see here. So Lima goes to the inside, and Fryman to the outside, into the next of the Hunaudière, makes slight contact. Maybe Fryman could have just opened up the steering a little bit there.
Yeah, that's probably how I diagnosed that one as well. It's easy to get frazzled, right? You just said it. You don't expect to be going 3 wide, shooting a GTP is the meat in a sandwich between two LMP2s. You're a little bit frazzled on the way into the braking zone. You can leave just a little bit more space there, but then again, it's such fine margins, such a high-speed chicane, and you talk about a hard braking zone that you really barely need to put any steering angle into. It's just a small kink, that little chicane in the middle of Mulsanne, but It is very, very stressful when there's that many cars running around you. Like this pack we see now, where it's, I believe it's Broughton Jones in the middle of Ignacio Arroyo, who continues to sit, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, in the 8th position there in class. Pardon me, not Ignacio Arroyo, that's Jeremy Eshelman, your points leader there in the LMP2 class. And we talked about the championship battles today. Jeremy Eshelman's been slowly leaking points to the pair of Brazilians, Decio Lima and Gustavo Ferraro of Vortex Racing. They're sitting P2 and P4 with other teammate Maicon Gisoni top of the class right now. Meanwhile, Jeremy Eshelman sits in P6. He's got some climbing to do, but luckily for him, Ferraro is only a couple cars up the road.
Yeah, let's concentrate on a little bit of folklore with regards to the 313 of Sasha Andrich's Porsche 963 Hybrid. Now, the livery itself was first seen in competition during the 1980 season when US-based customer team Dick Barber Racing entered a Porsche 935 K3 at this very circuit. Porsche Penske brought it back now for two reasons, because this year is the 75th anniversary of Porsche Motorsport and the 50th anniversary of Apple computers, set up by the likes of Steve Jobs and also I think Mr. Wozniak. I'm trying to remember his name.
Steve Wozniak.
There we go, Steve Wozniak. It always confused me. But that is one hell of a livery. Stick on a Porsche 963 Hybrid. And it looks absolutely glorious in the sunshine here at Le Mans. But look at Brock Morris. He was 2.8 seconds behind. And he is reeling in the 313 Porsche of Andrich as we now go through in towards the Mulsanne Straight. So we can see the 5.5 litre flat plane crank naturally aspirated caddy go after the turbocharged V8 Porsche in front of it. And quite an interesting thing, the Porsche, now if anyone might remember, the Porsche 919 was had a very interesting setup when it came to its internal combustion engine. And the thing itself, it had a 2-litre V4 turbocharged engine. The Porsche 963, however, they went full. I think they basically went on a different kind of category with regards to that one. It was a 4.6 litre 90-degree twin turbo V8. So over 2.5 times the capacity, 2 times the cylinders, both in a V formation, both turbocharged. But there we see that finally Brock Morris has made his way up into P4. Anthony Jenkins is closing in on Brian Scott. So as the temps have come in to the tyres on the cars on the drivers, we are seeing speeds. Sasha Andrich through the speed trap last time around 209.1 miles an hour. Christopher Pugliese in the 420 is clocked in at 203.1 miles an hour. However, we are seeing lap times anywhere between 10 to 15 seconds between the LMP2s and the GTPs. Here comes Gustavo Ferraro closing in on points leader Jeremy Eshelman. This is the battle for P4. You can see they're at high speed at the moment. Gustavo currently at the moment in 5th position in the class as they will now head into Mulsanne corner. Then it is the blast through Gulf underneath the Porsche banner very, very shortly. You can see there behind Gustavo Ferraro is Nathaniel Fryman and also Broughton Jones in the triple four. Here is Sasha Andrich, who's just lost out to the Good Wrench number 3, the livery of the old Intimidator himself. And you can just see this Cadillac is really starting to prove its worth. And Matsko, well, yeah, maybe when Benoit Trullier was partnering Marcel Fessler and Andre Lotterer when they won Le Mans against a cavalcade of Porsches, when both Alan McNish and Mike Rockenfeller both crashed in the Audi R18 e-tron whilst battling the might of Peugeot. It was down to Trullier, and he made a manoeuvre quite very much in the same vein as what we saw from Chase Matsko, but that was on tyres that have been used for 4 or 5 respective stints. in a row, and Trullier had to go for it. Barranco, in the meantime, trying to close in on Decio Lima. This is for P2 in the class. Maicon Ginzoni is up the road, and he's up by 6.4 seconds out of the Porsche curves. There is Maicon Ginzoni, as both Chase Matsko and Sasha Andrich has just had a problem. The 313 Porsche has lost it, and that is at Tetra Rouge, I believe.
Yeah, we'll see here what went on for Sasha Andrich. You see that the back end never seems to get traction here on his entry. It's a sweeping downhill cambered left-hander. Usually the front end is going to give you plenty of grip on entry, but it's the rear. It seems like he steps in the back end. Again, a very trimmed out setup here for Le Mans with the Mulsanne. Just, yeah, the back end never comes with him. His hands, he's full lock the second he feels it, but once the car steps out on you, especially with that cambered uphill exit, once it steps out, there's nothing even the best driver in the world can do. You're going around, and it's one of a couple mistakes we've seen from the field today, though generally speaking, not so much on the GTP side. They've stayed relatively clean and composed right now, and guy who's pretty clean and composed, Anthony Jenkins, just set the fastest lap of the race in his quest to chase down Brian Scott, who's generally speaking, like we talked about pre-race, had the pace of everybody here this week. He's really quick at Le Mans, and no Porsche, no non-Cadillac has won a race in this series as of yet. It's a perfect 8 for 8 sweep so far, Alex. Today could be the first time we see one of those Porsche 919s find their way to the top step.
Sorry, 963s, 919. Sorry,
thank
I
you.
confused you.
You've got it in my head. Yes, thank you.
There we go. That's the thing, when you can't, as a commentator, you can't have too much information. But the 963 is definitely a weapon in the hands of the number 85 of Brian Scott as he makes his way through out of Indianapolis, hard on the brakes into Arnage. It's a 90-degree right-hander. Brian currently part of the FMA endurance team. Of course, don't forget, FMA is also in action on a Monday night, where my partner in crime always likes to get behind the wheel of his Ford Mustang GT3.
Certainly do.
There you go.
Not here. That wouldn't go well here. And Mustang is not built for the high, for the high technical corners of the Porsche curves alone would be would spell an end to my mental health for at least a month.
Well, and then laden you with PTSD every time you saw a Ford at Le Mans.
Yes.
Right. Okay. Well, we still have yet to clap eyes on the new challenger from Dearborn, Michigan, but Woking have brought out their new hypercar, the MCL HY, which has come to a lot of acclaim as, oh dear, Curtis Koeniger at Indianapolis gets it all wrong in the BMW MV8 hybrid. Not been a good evening in the office for the Canadian, but his lap times have improved. Brian Scott, however, has just responded to Anthony Jenkins. He's just set a 3:28.424. The gap is still around about 2 seconds. Make that 2.5. So Brian Scott is making sure, as Broughton Jones has just gone straight on, and he is in pit lane. Let's have a look here. This is going to be on the run down to Indianapolis. He's going to go straight on. Watch this. He's just gone straight on. And, straight on into the barriers. And the Dallara P217. Let's have a look on board. 6th gear. Carries the speed through. He's trying to go down the gears. The car does not want to shift. He switches right. Bang.
Yeah, that is about as cut and dry of a front lockup as you can possibly get. That thing never had a chance of blowing it up there. Once you lose the front, once you have any piece, you're not turning in a high-speed corner like that, you're not getting the car to go with you. That is the difficulty of Le Mans. Long straights into the toughest corners on the service. Curtis Koeniger, once again, I'm so scared with these moments he's having, these off-track incidents, specifically around other cars. And again, we've talked about these high-speed corners. You finish a straightaway, the tires cool off. You're running with a very low ambient tire temperature, so you're not getting a lot of grip here in these high-speed sweepers. The only thing that makes that worse is having gravel dumped all over the track, and you're seeing debris and gravel going on. You can even see it in your frame there, all over the exit, all over the center of the track. There'd be some here from Sasha Andrich's earlier incident. It's going to change the complexion of this racetrack, and I know our top GTP drivers, like mentioned Brian Scott, currently leading, Anthony Jenkins, runner-up in the championship in P2, Brock Morris in P5, and of course Eduardo Salas has been very quick all season. But even the best drivers on the service, if you spend this entire race only seeing a corner every 3.5 minutes, if you come up to it and you're not ready and it's covered in gravel, your grip goes out the window, and even the best are going to make that mistake. I really hope today's race doesn't come down to something like that for a top driver or an interaction between a GTP and an LMP2. We love that to be an element. We love it to add a little bit of pizzazz. You don't want to see a great racer's race ruined by that interclass, relationship.
Yeah, oh dear. All I can say is I'm so glad that Curtis Kinnicker did not do a Paul Dallo Lama there a few years ago when he ended up going into the barriers hard with just 1 hour remaining. Decio Lima is going to have to serve a drive-through penalty. So looks like the Brazilian has hit his points limit. Let's have a look, check on some of our cameras on board, as there is the man himself. One of the most, our favourite interviewee here on the FMA Prototype Challenge Series, Mr. Personality, I think we should call Decio Lima, to be honest with you. So you can just see he's got, there's another rig in the background for the man from Brazil for the Vortex Racing outfit. But Macon Ginzoni is now 8.4 seconds up the road. Decio Lima makes his way out of what will be Arnage, and there is Maicon on his way through in towards the Porsche. Well, he's on his way, but it's actually Mulsanne, so it gets me confused a little bit from time to time. You think they're going through Arnage, we're actually going through Mulsanne. So here goes Maicon Ginzoni through Indianapolis, and I love the simplicity of some liveries, but you can see, look at this, Anthony Jenkins has absolutely been roaring away, but Brian Scott in the last lap lost a big amount of time. His best lap 2 laps ago was a 3 minute 28.4. He just did a 3:31.9. Jenkins did a 30.6. So Anthony Jenkins, who started P3, looking to equal the ledger, but Brian Scott has got to make that rear end of that Porsche 963 hybrid as wide as humanly possible, as Jay Davis has come in within the first 18 minutes of the motor race. So it looks like it is going to be a two-stopper. It's a very, very fuel-heavy circuit here at Le Mans.
Most certainly is. We talked about it in the intro. 1 lap, 4 minutes almost for these cars can make a huge difference in terms of how far you can go on fuel. You never want to push it, and you want to be very careful when you fill the car. iRacing gives you an option in the back end if you use the iRacing fuel calculation. How much of a margin do you want for fuel? How much extra do you want to put in? I'd recommend to every single driver do not try to push that limit too much, because I'll tell you, it is hard to find a half a lap of fuel when that lap is 4 minutes long.
Especially when over 1/3 of it is going to be at full throttle. Curtis Kieniker now into pit lane in the 111 BMW M V8 hybrid. Decio Lima now in pit road, as there we see Eduardo Sales. Now Sales is not that far behind. Of course, Ferrari in the, with regards to the official work squad and also the sister squad have won here at Le Mans. For the likes of Robert Kubica, Ye Fei, amongst others, have also been at the honour roll list here at Le Mans. But here we have the onboard with Anthony Jenkins, and that is out of Arnage. So we're going to see how quickly he can close that 4.7 of a second gap of disadvantage that he's got, as this is going to be the run down to, this is the run from Mulsanne. I've done it again. Mulsanne, it's going to happen quite a lot, folks, believe you me, as there we see the man from Tampa, Florida, on his driver cam into Indianapolis, as a bit of a run wide by both drivers, but the gap is around about 0.4 of a second. Hard on the brakes, down into first gear. Now pick up the power. Bit of a mistake coming out of Arnage by Brian Scott. Now Jenkins has got to keep with him. However, in the next few corners, as we go through Courbe de Buisson into the Porsche curves coming up very shortly, which is going to be now. And look at how close Jenkins is This is going to be close to the wall for both drivers. They're going to be very, very careful. To the right-hand side of the barriers, now through into karting. And then it's going to be the run into Corvette. To the right is where that is the main building for the karting circuit. So just off of Corvette, now into Ford. And again, Scott has got to keep Jenkins at bay. But look, who is going to go into the pit lane? They both go into the pit lane at the same time. So just after 21 minutes, Sales is going to cover them off. That is not at all surprising. So it is going to be a two-stopper here at Le Mans for these GTPs. I'm going to be interested to see how long it's going to be before our LMP2 cars decide to pit here, Marshall, because that's going to be an interesting question as Brock Morris comes in, Chase Matsko comes in. I'm sure that Sasha Andrich will also follow suit. And let's see, does Andrich pitch? Yes, he does. So let's have a look. Oh, Ignacio Arroyo, this is going to be over rotation, lock up the tyres. Oh dear, pucker time there for the Puerto Rican.
You can really lose it at any corner here at Le Mans. I think that's what we've discovered here today. Any section, any type of corner, and any point in the run. And you make a really interesting point there about the pit strategy here for the LMP2s. I think a huge component of this race could be timing for tires, and if anybody feels like going the whole hour without them. We often see drivers will take a pit stop for a full set of rubber, one of the two pit stops every week in this series. I think with how difficult that warm-up phase is going to be, because you have so few opportunities early in the lap to put heat in the tires, you're just running along straightaways. There's no lateral heat being put in at all to get to the core of the tire. Because that's so difficult, I wonder if some of our more pragmatic, clever drivers have said, hey, what if we just forego that pit stop entirely for tires and say, all right, we're going to have a tough time through the Porsche curves, back up our entry a little bit, back up our braking points, save ourselves that time in getting the tires up to temperature. Or if you're going to take tires, first pit stop versus second, that's going to be something I think for us to keep an eye on. By my eye, nothing really out of the ordinary, nothing all too surprising in the pit stop, with the exception of Brock Morris has leapfrogged Eduardo Salles. Salles lost, give or take, something to the tune of about 6 seconds to the top two of Brian Scott and Anthony Jenkins. Potentially that could time out as either a mistake on pit entry, maybe he missed his sign a little bit, had to back up, or he may have taken a set of two tires. My guess, based on my knowledge of Le Mans, would probably be fronts.
Yeah, considering the fact that these a lot of these GTP cars, including the Ferrari 499P, actually have over a certain speed, the car will activate its four-wheel drive systems, as we now see the flood of drivers come out from LMP2. So Ginzoni, Barranco, Ryman, Eshelman has just jumped Gustavo Ferraro in pit lane. So what on earth has happened to our man from Brazil in the 777 who picked up his first win in the LMP2 division last week at Hockenheim? This is going to be quite crucial how he now responds in terms of strategy, because it doesn't matter what kind of race you have here at Le Mans. It can be 60 minutes, it can be 6 hours, it can be 24 hours. Everyone is absolutely flat chat and pushing. And whilst that's been happening, Jenkins is losing time to Brian Scott, because Brian Scott is now 4.2 seconds up the road. Jenkins did a 36.76, Scott a 36.96, Morris a 37.42, Salles a 38.52, and Matsko, who is all the way down in 7th position, he was in the pits for just over a minute. So I'm wondering whether Chase Matsko, that sounds to me like there's a possible black flag pit lane infringement, whether he's decided to carefully use some of that time to stick 4 new tyres on that caddy, because if he has, that's going to be the sharpest weapon out of all of them out on the circuit.
It's a great point, but you really can only make up so much ground. Let's check for the fun of it and really analyze, because often it's the pit entry that I think is such an interesting component here for a lot of drivers. It's something we've seen in every FMA series lately. Pit entries have been a real tough topic for a lot of drivers. They've spelled the end of a lot of races. There you go, clear as day.
Goes straight on. That's easy to do here at Le Mans. Very easy to do indeed. So the Goodrich Wrench, number 3, Dale Earnhardt liveried caddy, has lost a lot of time. That cost him big time. And that's nearly 3 times, that's nearly treble the amount of time that we would have seen from the likes of our leader, Brian Scott, as Brock Morris, still holding on to P3. But when you think about it, it's going to, if it's going to be an 18, if it's going to go towards 18 laps, then it is going to be 6 laps per stint. And we're seeing the speeds again. Sasha Andrich, who started 4th, now runs P6, 208.8 miles an hour in the speed trap. Brian Scott, so the Porsches have the top line, the top speed advantage. They look to be a little bit more slippery in the terms of the aerodynamics in comparison with the caddies, which are a bit more boxy and a bit more angularly designed, let's say, especially with that arrow tip style front end. You would think that the Cadillac would be the faster car in a straight line. And there comes Brian Jenkins out of one of the Hunaudiers. A very, very different set of styles when it comes to car aerodynamics and how the body shapes really parlay to aerodynamic push through on dirty or clear air, respectively.
Yeah, that's going to be an advantage really all season for the Porsche and typically the Ferrari. I find that the Ferrari has such a good get off the corner, such a good ability to put the power down at the beginning of exits that similarly to what we see on Mondays in the GT3 as a Ford Mustang driver, the car doesn't naturally or shouldn't have the raw flat end horsepower of cars like the Mercedes. It shouldn't be the fastest through the speed traps, but often it will be compared to its class because it can put the power down so cleanly. Often that is what I hear about cars like the Ferrari, like the Cadillac, whereas similar to the Mercedes in the GT3 category, the Porsche can just put the pedal to the floor, absolutely pick up speed by the end of the straightaway, and it's one that, you know, historically has done quite well in iRacing at a lot of the top-end events at Le Mans when they're run. As some other sims have, you know, exclusive rights in some areas, but iRacing top-level racing has often favored the Porsche, but it's also favored the Ferrari, and I wish we would see more Ferraris in this series. Eduardo Sala is our only full-time runner of the Ferrari entry, but the 499P has an incredible bit of pace in the high-speed corners that I think a lot of our schedule really hasn't played favor to, and I think our schedule, it's been more or less the way it's built. We give total credit to the drivers of Jenkins and Morris, but I think the Cadillac does just, its ability to stay a little bit more sturdy, and like you say, be a little bit more boxy in a way that is more predictable aerodynamically. It's a little bit less twitchy. To a lot of drivers, that is a little bit more appealing. It runs better over the course of long races, and I think we'd agree here, Alex. We may only run a 1-hour race every Thursday, but a lot of the time, predictability and an ability to just survive attrition and run not just fast laps, but consistent fast laps, that's what spelled the day. That's what's crowned the winners on Thursdays, and that's why Jenkins and Morris in the Cadillac entries have dominated the championship.
Yeah, and here at Le Mans, it's not always about what you can do with the car, it's about how you can battle with the circuit. As we hit 31 minutes on the timer left to go here at Le Mans for this week of the FMA Prototype Challenge Series here on Race and Nexus. You're in the company of Alex Goldschmidt and Marshall Crocker up here in the Global Broadcast Centre as we see Curtis Kinnicker get through on the number 20 car of Nathaniel Fryman, who currently runs P2 in the LMP2 division. Now, it has changed because Barranco is through and is leading. So there he is, just coming through into shot in the number 59. And he has definitely made an impression here. Macon Ginzoni loses a little bit of time because he spun it. Oh dear, and that was right underneath the Dunlop Bridge. So Macon Ginzoni spins it. There goes Barranco. He says thank you very much. He's got to wait, and there goes Fryman. So Macon Ginzoni, a master of his own demise on that particular occasion, I'm afraid. So the Brazilian has got to go absolutely flat chat, make no mistakes. And there's a replay again up the hill. Oh, that was definitely a Code Brown moment in clean up on aisle 3. And he's got to bring the Vortex mop to clean up the mess after him, I'm afraid. But that now means that our top 3 drivers in the LMP2 division are covered by just under 9 seconds. So Macon Ginzoni has got to be praying for a miracle right about now.
Well, he's got to be at least just calming down, getting back in a rhythm, getting poised. You actually should be able to see it on your screen right now. A cloud cover has come in pretty strongly here over the top of the circuit at Virtual Le Mans. The track conditions are going to cool down. You're going to get a little bit more grip, and often that is going to play into the drivers that are most aggressive on turn-in, that are attacking the corners most. That's historically been Maicon Gizzoni. For good and for bad, that's what can lead to mistakes, but that leads to such exceptional high-end pace. I know for a fact, he's my teammate on Mondays, Anthony Barranco is still coming up to terms with this LMP2 car. He's still getting comfortable. He's still getting fresh. I think Maicon Gizzoni has proved in this series his top-end pace might be better than anybody in that LMP2 class. If he can just get his head back in the rhythm, get those tires cleaned off, get them back in the temperature window, I think he's got a chance to go track down the race leader because, you know, on Thursday nights, 9 seconds either category. 9 seconds is nothing. These guys make that up all the time, especially when you're driving passionate, especially when you're driving hard, and especially when you've led most of the race and you don't feel like giving it up just quite yet.
Well, Barranco has just lost about half a second to Fryman in P2, so with these cloud cover above, let's look at the temperatures at the moment. 66 degrees Fahrenheit, that's about 19 degrees Celsius. And we've gone down from around about 31, we've dropped 4 degrees centigrade, so we've gone from around about 86 degrees Fahrenheit to 81. So that's now 27. The humidity is climbing, which means normally at Le Mans, if the temperature drops and the humidity starts to climb, there is one thing that could potentially be inbound. Could there be a potential threat of rain on the cards? Because there's always that old adage, and it happens at Spa as well, Marshall. Rain can be hitting at one point of the circuit, and it could be bone stock dry somewhere else. If we get rain, that could really upset the apple cart here today at Le Mans.
I mean, that would be unbelievable. I would love it. You make such a great point. How large this track is. Conditions can be entirely different one to the other, and you could just be going back and forth like a pendulum. You know, dry, wet, dry, wet. It's an absolute driver's nightmare. I experienced it one time in my entire life at Le Mans here in the sim, and it's an experience that changes you. You can be a veteran. I've been in karting and in sim-related racing at that point for 16 years, and I still felt like a first-time newbie. The first time you have to experience what it's like to roll the cosmic dice every corner. How much grip do I have on entry? You find out when you turn in. That's why I love Le Mans. Well, you just said it. Look at how bright this section of the track is here, Alex. Like, it's such a large, vast circuit. You get different stuff in every corner, and I talked about it. I called it a marathon in a racetrack earlier. It really is a marathon in one singular lap, and it's one that, well, you hit the white flag as the race leader. Never is that feeling less satisfying than when you've still got 3.5 more minutes of racing to do.
Yeah, I mean, with that kind of situation where it's dark on one part of the circuit and sunny on the other, and if rain was to fall, you'd have to channel your inner Jensen Button. If anyone might remember his antics with McLaren Mercedes back when he joined the team after his championship-winning year in 2009 with Braun GP. Of course, Jensen, in the twilight of his racing career, now retired, was running with the Hertz Jota Sport team in the Caddy in his farewell season last year in 2025. As we ride on board, Eduardo Salles is getting closer and closer. That Ferrari is now starting to reel in Brock Morris, who's had a couple of slowdown penalties. So the might of the Cavallino Rampante, the prancing horse, is flooding its way towards one of the big three in US automakers when it comes to GM, Ford, and then also, you know, it's so funny when you see. I like the fact that manufacturers such as Ferrari, such as Cadillac, such as Porsche. Unfortunately, at the end of this year, we are going to see the Alpine mark leave, but then 2027, we will have the blue oval back in the top tier of prototype racing, along with McLaren, who have won Le Mans. If anyone might remember the McLaren F1 GT, well, the Le Mans edition of the McLaren F1, which on debut, it was kind of like, let's put it all together. The car designed by the effervescent and enigmatic Gordon Murray now has the GMA brand with the Gordon Murray Automotive brand with the wonderfully sounding T50 that has been helped and developed by a man that really needs no introduction, that's pretty much raced all over the globe, Mr. Dario Franchitti, man who's won the IndyCar Series title multiple times and is also a former Indianapolis 500 winner, being as it is, folks, the month of May. As we now see Brian Scott, he's going to come and lap Ignacio Arroyo in the 207, and the 85 FMA Endurance Team Porsche gets through, but that's a bit of a mistake there through the chicane. He's going to have to serve a slow down penalty. And Anthony Jenkins is like going, oh dear, don't make those kind of mistakes, Brian, because I will be closing. And what's more, we are getting on to their 4th lap of their 2nd stint. So I would imagine we are going to have another set of pit stops before that. Jay Davis has just pitted from 5th in the GTP classification, but Anthony Jenkins now has only 2.4 seconds to make up. It's all going to come down to this final set of pit stops, folks. Can Brian Scott hold off the man from Tampa, Florida, Anthony Jenkins, in the 732? And his, well, Jenkins' nearest rival, who is still leading the standings, Brock Morris, is still in P3. But the big thing is that how much is this going to take out of Brock Morris's lead after this week of the series? Because we haven't got that long to go. After this, we've got 4 more rounds remaining. So week 9. Oh dear, Curtis Koeniger has just had a big off, and this is not where you want it to happen. It's at Indianapolis, and oh, that's a wreck and a half.
I think would make a better dinner plate than a race car after that wreck. Oh my goodness, the bodywork went flying on that one. Well, it's been a tough day that Curtis Koeniger, who I believe, from what I've seen in the public chats this week, is still getting up to terms with the car, still putting in practice to better understand the GTP category. Well, that is a lesson hard learned, and yeah, if you run a high force feedback wheel, those can hurt too. You got to be careful when you hit a wall that hard. Hit the initial impact on the right-hand side, driver's right, and then slap the wall, driver's left on the end of the wreck. That was a vicious way to end your Thursday night.
I'm sure that hopefully he let go of the steering wheel when that happened, because that could potentially, and I've had it before, where drivers have either dislocated thumbs or they've broken thumbs just by hanging on the steering wheel. And yeah, force feedback, especially when it's quite high, can be very, very disruptive to your sim racing career if you don't let go of that steering wheel on a massive wreck like that. However, Brock Morris now will get through on Ignacio Arroyo. So there is Eduardo Sales in the back of your picture. Mean time at the moment, well, Anthony Branco still leads the way ahead of Nathan Fryman, Nathaniel Fryman, and Macon Gonzoni. So Branco has done a sterling job in the number 59 car. He leads by 3.5 seconds as we're coming down to the final 20 minutes plus change here at Le Mans for week 8 out of 12 of the FMA Prototype Challenge Series live here on Racer Nexus. Let's take you through the top 5 of the respective classes as we head towards the 20-minute mark. It is Brian Scott for the FMA Endurance team that leads the way. He has led 12 laps so far. He started on the pole. Anthony Jenkins just behind him, about 2.7 seconds adrift. You can see here through the first chicane, it's even getting darker here now as well. Brock Morris in P3 in the number 80 in the number 05 Dex Imaging car. Eduardo Sales in the number 22 Ferrari rounds out your top 4 with Sasha Andrich in the wonderful Porsche Apple Computers livery. Rounds out your top 5 in GTP. Then we go to LMP2. It's Anthony Branco that leads the way in the number 59. He's being chased down by Nathaniel Fryman, who's about 3.4 seconds behind. Maicon Ginzoni, the man from Brazil, in P3, with Jeremy Eshelman, the points leader, who has made up 4 places in the class, and now runs P4 ahead of Gustavo Ferraro in the number 777. And that is your top 5 rundown, just under 19.5 minutes to go. This is going to be an interesting one because Sasha Andrich has now come into the pits, locks up before the pit lane. Limiter is needed to be engaged, so probably dodged a bullet, did the number 313. But that is probably a lap early than expected, because I would say the next time around, we will have the rest of our drivers pitting in the GTP. LMP2, that could also be a rather interesting conundrum, Marshall, because that depends on who's going to get into the pit lane first. How long are you going to spend on your marks? Are you going to miss your pit box? Are you going to have to reverse back or move forward? This is a very demanding track, the most demanding on our calendar, the longest on our calendar by a clear country mile, not country kilometre, even though we are in continental Europe. But nevertheless, it is the pit stops that are going to really dictate how the drivers do, and especially with your out laps after said pit stop.
For a moment ago here in Indianapolis, here's Jeremy Eshelman. Oh my goodness, talk about a back end stepping out. I thought he was going to attack the curb too hard on entry. That back end just never grabbed any grip there as he came down the track. And another case in point of these cambered corners with the high kind of small outside banking, similar to that of Indianapolis, quite fittingly. If you get in on a wrong angle, you put too much tire on that heavy dip on the inside with the curbing, that'll happen to you very quickly. We talked about just a moment ago, he's made up 4 spots throughout the course of this race. We said in the intro how easy it was going to be to pass and how that would benefit Jeremy Eshelman, who, despite being your points leader in LMP2, often doesn't have a ton of time to put into practice. He often joins these sessions right before the race, today being no exception. But you make the great point about the pit in, pit out, and I think one thing that's going to be interesting is the actual pit time itself. Of the LMP2 category, 4 drivers there right at the top of the board, 5 drivers at the top of the board in the class, all pitted on lap number 6. They were able to stretch the extra lap out on fuel. The 2 that did not, that are still in contention, Decio Lima and Ignacio Arroyo, both pitted on lap 5. The rest of that group pitted on lap 6, whereas the GTP category uniformly all pitted on lap 6. So that group that had the extra lap of fuel they were able to make up on the first stop, you probably took a full tank earlier. Now you have the flexibility to take that extra lap if you probably don't need the undercut, but maybe you just want to save yourself a little bit of time in pit road, and here we go. This could be the race for the win right now, Mr. Goldschmidt. Here's Scott, here's Jenkins, here's Morris, and here's Salez entering pit road for the final time.
Yeah, I completely concur with you there, Mr. Crocker, as the proof is, as they say, in the pudding, and Brian Scott is going to now pull up to his marks. Anthony Jenkins just behind him, a couple of garages back. But this is where the real race begins here at FMA Prototype Challenge Series, week 8 out of 12 at the place where legends are born, Le Mans. And more to the point, who is going to be the one that takes that little bit less amount of fuel? It is going to be close. Brian Scott, 21 seconds. Anthony Jenkins with a howitzer of a pit stop, 19.88. And, well, I think Jenkins might have just done a move that has just said to Brian Scott, okay, it's time for you, sir, to play one simple game. Well, remember wacky races, folks. It's time, well, in another vernacular, to catch that caddy.
I like that quite a bit. It's a game that's been played many a times this season in an FMA Prototype Challenge. Doesn't it feel like almost every week that Brock Morris has tried to keep up with Anthony Jenkins and find a way past when he starts behind? And often Jenkins is the one that's having to do it with Brock. But once again, Anthony Jenkins finds himself in a late race battle for the win. He's fallen on the wrong side of that a couple times this season. That's part of why Brock Morris still has a slight championship advantage. Talk about how huge this would be for Anthony Jenkins if he can hold off the guy we know today has had the pace of the field. 3 seconds to the good there in practice. Brian Scott, once he gets those tires up to temperature, he's going to be quick. And the reason I say that, he came into the pits with an advantage, he left down, and immediately the first couple turns he lost a little bit of ground right away. Either he was rusty coming back out of pit road, or Brian Scott just took new rubber and Anthony Jenkins did not, or it was a 4-tire to 2-tire split. Either way, Jenkins now has track position. We'll see if we see an uptick in Brian Scott's pace here in a moment. that could indicate he just took tires. But that could be a very interesting component here late in the race. And, you know, Anthony Jenkins, we talked about it. He's put on some great defensive performances here throughout the season. Is there anything harder than a guy as fast as Brian Scott proved to be pre-race with a tire advantage?
Well, I think as the great Tom Christensen once said, in truth about 24, every second counts. You want all your weapons sharp. And this, if that decision, Brian Scott spending an extra 2.5 seconds longer in his marks on pit road, that could be decisive. Right, okay, Barranco, Fryman, Ginzoni now in pit road. Let's wait to see if Eshelman and Ferraro do the same and come into pit road at the same time. Yes, that is the case. So let's have a look here. Chase Matsko. Oh dear. Oh, that's a bit of a code brown there for the number 26. And he just pulls to the side of the road and he has turned to the garage. So whether Chase Matsko, that is going to be a long time in the pit lane. Fryman's car is up on the jack, so whether he's decided to take maybe a front or a rear set of tyres, and it looks like Chase Matsko might be sitting the rest of this race out, because after 38, 39 seconds, well, he's also got the toe to consider. Macon Gonzoni will return to the circuit in P3, but Barranco has a lead over Fryman of just over 5.3 seconds. And that advantage for the number 59 is starting to climb. Meantime, Brian Scott, I would say that maybe if he's taken some tyres, he's going to need to get those up to temp. And the minute that he does get those up to temp, watch what the Porsche might be capable of. And look how aggressive he is through on the curving, especially through the final chicane. Runs a little bit wide, but not enough for him to go completely off track limits. But the gap is about 1.5 seconds. So now Brian Scott really needs to start motoring. Through the top speed trap, he was 2.6 miles an hour quicker than the man in front, and that gap is coming down all the time. Once we get onto the Mulsanne, I would expect that gap to drop significantly, but it's down to Brian Scott now on whether he can wrestle that win away from Anthony Jenkins. And as we said already at the top of the show, this circuit does need, confidence. It needs that skill. It needs that bravery. You've just got to be confident in your own abilities. Brock Morris, I think the race is fast slipping away from him in terms of taking the W. But Brian Scott now he's got to put everything into this. Once he sees that HUD with all 4 tyres up to temp, that will give him the purchase, and that gap is coming down. It's 1.3 seconds in the last stretch of the Mulsanne Straight. Brian Scott closed in by about 2 and a bit tenths of a second. There we see Gustavo Ferraro in front of Anthony Jenkins. Now Brian Scott might get an earshot of what's going on here. Jenkins using the slipstream of the LMP2 to dart his way past, around the outside and into the next of the Hunaudière. He's got to be very, very careful, especially when you go past an LMP2 at over 200 miles an hour in the slipstream. You've got to watch out for that braking zone at the Hunaudière. And now Brian Scott has got through on the same individual. So the battle between the top 2 with just under 11 minutes to go. They are heading into Mulsanne corner. They've got to be very, very careful right about now. And Brian Scott is now saying to Anthony Jenkins, shots are fired, mon ami.
It's so fascinating watching the way the two guys drive. I've seen a lot of onboard footage from Anthony Jenkins this year. The one thing I notice from a driver's perspective as I watch Brian Scott, watch his wheel here, specifically watch his gearing. He's a very late shifter. He likes to do all of his shifting in big bunches, but he's also taking corners, what I would argue a gear up from what you would naturally want. As a driver's perspective, you want rotation. You want the car to turn in the second you throw it into a corner. Well, not only is Brian Scott throwing it in hard and late on the brakes, he's staying up a gear. He's letting the revs naturally build and maintain, rather than artificially dropping the revs down to lose speed on corner entry just to get rotation. He is barely keeping this thing rotating through corners at a very high gear level. Even here you see no rev lights on the dash. That car is not in the lowest gear it can be to get maximum rotation, but he's maintaining really good speed by staying high, and that's a big part of the reason you see here through the Porsche curves. Watch every time you see Jenkins' braking point, it's a little bit later for Brian Scott. I know Jenkins is a very consistent, very smooth guy. It makes him easy to save tires with, but here on board with Brian Scott, let's watch again as he throws himself through these high-speed, high-curve corners. The final chicane, look at how he makes up the gap, loses a little bit on exit. But that's what I'm talking about there, Alex. That high gear, staying a little bit higher in the revs through every single corner, carries more speed, but it makes the car harder to handle on entry. He is fearless the way Scott's pushing right now. That is probably why he was finding that 3 seconds pre-race.
Now look at that through the chicane.
Whoa. Oh,
You
my
could
goodness.
just see he is. It's like he's wrestling with a crocodile at the moment here, Marshall. To be completely honest with you, he is absolutely not letting go. He wants this win, and with the way that, as you rightly said, no lights indicated on the steering wheel, and what that says to me is that he's keeping it within that torque band, and the torque. Okay, power of the engine is one crucial thing, but it's the torque. That natural range, that optimal range when you carry that speed and you know that you've got 90 to 100% of the torque deployable from the engine at your disposal. Jenkins now has got another back marker. Brian Scott at the minute is closing in. That gap is now half a second. Brian Scott could get a double toe here. Jenkins is closing in, and this is going to be on Jeremy Eshelman, who pulls the left-hand side of the circuit to keep out of the way. But Brian Scott is closing now up towards the next of the Hunaudière. We're riding on board with the 85 with just 7 3/4 minutes to go. Brian Scott is within striking distance into the next of the Hunaudières. Look how much speed he carries, and Anthony Jenkins is able to carry it through, but Brian Scott has to back out of it and open up the steering just so he does not collect the rear of Anthony Jenkins's car, because that would spell disaster for the pair of them, because 14.5 seconds behind is Brock Morris in the 05, and one big incident between these two would spell disaster for them in terms of the run to victory lane here at Le Mans.
Yeah, what a battle we've seen between these two gentlemen here in the late stages, and it's something we've talked about. You know, it's one thing to catch, it's another thing to pass in this series, and we saw it there. I think Brian would have been right on the edge of having a good slipstream there. The margin tends to be, if you can get within about 9/10 here at Le Mans, by the time you get to Mulsanne, by the end you've done that long straightaway, usually you can get about even after 9/10 of a second. He was just outside that margin last time by, and you saw Brian Scott. He's catching up to him in a braking zone, but he goes off there. He carries too much speed. That's what I was about to mention. It's one thing to carry all this speed in. You get this great slipstream, this great tow, but you need to woe the car up to compensate for it. And that's why when you're high commit like Brian Scott was into that chicane you saw a moment ago, he brought in all that speed on entry. He got right to the back bumper, and then Anthony Jenkins was more poised, had the car angled more, had more steering input ready, had the tires loaded up, and could get the better run off the exit to extend that gap again. You have to be smart about where you catch here if you're Brian Scott, and you got to make sure you're doing so with enough time to get at least a couple shots at the, a couple cracks at the rock, because with how well Anthony Jenkins has defended this season, what is it now? Just a tick under 6 minutes we just hit now left in this race. That may not be enough. That is give or take. Well, it's not give or take. It's exactly 2 laps here. 2 laps to go. May not be enough for Brian Scott, but we know he's got the pace to at least catch Jenkins one more time.
Yeah, that is going to be just round about 26.4. Well, that's going to be 26.3 miles. So that is not going to be possibly enough. That's over 16.5 miles in totality. But Brian Scott, he's not ready to give up yet. But he's just got a slow down penalty. Was that moment going through into Indianapolis the decisive cast of the die by the 85, who has been putting on an absolute clinic here at Le Mans? And Anthony Jenkins, in the meantime, has just put in the fastest lap of the 3:28.4. We're going to see it again. Late on the brakes, understeers, gravel.
Really great job to keep the car under him, though. It's so natural as a driver to want to start seesawing the wheel in the direction you need the car to correct. He kept his hands straight, kept it steady on the throttle, waited until he was out of the kitty litter to apply the throttle. He got back on the track quite well. And the way he's running right now, he's doing very well. Brian Scott, you can see it here. He's already making the time up from that slowdown penalty. He dropped to about 3 seconds. He's already back to 2.4 back of Jenkins. But Anthony Jenkins just ran the fastest lap of the race last time by 1:28.4. Steals it from Brian Scott, who had a 3:28.42 as his best time of the day. Shout out to a guy like Brock Morris, often the class of the field when it comes to pace. He's dominated flag to flag at a couple races on Thursday nights this year. He hasn't even touched the 3:28s yet. So for these two guys to be as quick as they are tonight, Jenkins and Scott just in a different class. And I don't know about you, Alex, for a while, it really didn't feel like Jenkins was going to factor into this race in terms of pure pace. It felt like Brian Scott had the class of the field. It looks like that 732 car gets more and more comfortable with his braking points, with his turn-in markers as this race goes on. Right now, though, a little bit of lap traffic for him to navigate.
Yeah, and also the track temperature has dropped significantly. We're now at 73 degrees Fahrenheit, which is now 23 Celsius. Humidity is climbing all the while. We are now basically on 3 minutes 30 to go. 1 lap remaining after this. The driver's now 70% of the way through the lap as they will head down in towards Mulsanne corner. And you see, there we see Brian Scott, who's got that gap down. It's come down big time. It's 1.5 seconds and closing. So Brian Scott is going to do everything in his power. There's only been 1 lead change, and that was when Anthony Jenkins pit Brian Scott in the pit lane. 22.35 for the 85, 19.88 for the current race leader. So if Brian Scott had not been on his pit stop marks for longer than 20 seconds, I think we would have seen probably a closer battle, and maybe the fact that Brian Scott could have usurped Anthony Jenkins, who had a little bit further to run down in that pit lane. But we are coming down to the dying stages of this race. Anthony Branco and Nat Fryman, Megan Gonzoni, Jeremy Eshelman, et al. They are, well, there we go. There's Fryman. He's just going through into the first chicane. But Brian Scott is now absolutely flying at the minute. 1.2 seconds is the gap. White flag in the air here at Le Mans. This is the last lap of the race. And Anthony Jenkins has got a 1.3 second advantage over Brian Scott. What can the 85 Porsche from the FMA Endurance team do in the next, let's say, 12 kilometers? It's going to be a tough one to call this, but Jenkins now starts to open up that gap through the Dunlop chicane, now heading into Tetra Rouge. Got to be very, very careful, especially going towards the high side. Brian Scott now has another slowdown penalty. I think it might be game over for the 85 Porsche, because if he was a second behind, I think he would have been closing that gap by now.
And what a heartbreaking spot to get that slowdown. The entry, the start of the Mulsanne Straight, where you need to build up all that speed. I think this might be signed, sealed, delivered for Anthony Jenkins, because again, even if Brian Scott makes up that gap, which he did last lap, he took 2.8 seconds down to 1.2 in the span of last lap, but you need to do it, catch him, and then still have a passing opportunity left in that last sector, right around pit entry with all those high curb chicanes. That's not a great spot to do it. A race that might not be over for the lead, though. LMP2, Nathaniel Fryman versus Anthony Barranco. Battle of the Monday night GT3 regulars that are jumping over here for a one-off night in the LMP2 class. This might be the battle to watch for the win. And keep an eye and see where your GTP leader is. This could be their last lap, too. If they get lapped here to the finish, side by side they go.
Barranco has got Fryman ahead of him by a nose. It's going to be a right-hander coming up as they're going to go into Mulsanne corner. Fryman gets through. Is he going to stop on the anchors in time for the right-hander? Yes, he runs wide. However, Barranco trying to close back in on him. But Nathaniel Fryman in the number 20. Take a bow, good sir. Started in 6th. Well, he's currently P1 in the class. Yeah, really has showcased that he's been one to watch as we hit 0 on the timer now. This is the last lap of the race, and Freiman and Barranco, they are very, very close to getting through towards the end of the lap, as they will make their way through into the next right-hander. Who is that straight off? Oh, that was Brian Scott. He's pushing too hard. Once again, the curse of Indianapolis strikes for the 85. Anthony Jenkins really having to mind his P's and Q's, but Brock Morris coming under fire. Here's Eduardo Salles, and he's one of the Vortex Brazil team. He's got right on the back, going through out of what will be Mulsanne corner, and look at this, the Ferrari looking to stick its nose somewhere in the midst of all of this, and to the inside he goes. That's Salles on at Indianapolis. Can he get the move done on Brock Morris? He's just about got it done, and it's through at the Porsche curves. I cannot believe it. But here we go. It is going to be another win for Cadillac. Anthony Jenkins equals it at 4 wins apiece, closes the gap to Brock Morris, and Anthony Jenkins, vainqueur du monde ce soir ici. Well done to Anthony Jenkins. He rules the roost despite the best efforts of Brian Scott. Anthony Barranco is going to finish P2, but it's going to be Nathaniel Freiman that is going to take the win in the LMP2 division. He has done everything he needed to. But the thing is, he's going for another lap, even though he actually finished ahead of Anthony Barranco. So Nathaniel Freiman, this could be a victory lap for him. Brock Morris is going to finish P4. Maicon Ginzoni takes P3 in the Vortex LMP2 Delara, rounding out your top 3 in that class. But my goodness me, Anthony Jenkins makes it 4 apiece heading into our next round of the calendar, which is going to take us to the home of British motor racing. The Floridian does it again and equals Brock Morris's run of form. Eduardo Salles got the fastest lap of the race. We're waiting for a few more drivers to cross the line. Gustavo Ferraro will take P5. Decio Lima not that far behind him. But Sasha Andrich doing Porsche and Apple and Penske proud in the 313 was started on the outside of the front row, but nevertheless, he's going to bring it across the line in P5. Jay Davis will be the last of our classified runners in the GTP delivery, as we're going to see the move here. And this was Freiman's attempt to go around the outside of Barranco, and it was an absolute perler. He got ahead by a nose, and it was down into this do or die moment, and Freiman just thought, well, cry havoc and let slip the dogs of war. Runs a little bit wide. Barranco tries to get on the inside of him, and Freiman gets the move completed. That was what sealed the deal for the number 20.
And here's the move that became the final podium position in the GTP class. Eduardo Salles, Pip's championship leader coming into today. Brock Morris. There was a little bit of contact. Left rear on right front there. Salles on Morris. Very, very tight margins there in the late stages. Look at that one more time. I want to see Brock Morris's right front to get his perspective on that moment.
And let's just have a look here. This is how close it can be when you're battling for position. And this is going to be to the outside. So we'll have... oh, that's how close it was. It was a little bit of a hip and shoulder check, but you know what they say, that rubbing is racing, and well, Brock Morris is going to think of where did it all go wrong. He didn't have the best qualifying. Let's be completely honest. And as I said at the top of the show, it is not about where you qualify here at Le Mans. It's about where you finish. And Brock Morris will be thinking, could have had that podium, but you know what? Sometimes picking up the points can be the better discourse. And, you know, using a bit of discretion is the better part of valor, as Nat Freiman, the man from Middleton, is going to make his way to victory lap. This has been a bit of a victory lap, but it hasn't shown any sign of slowing down here for the number 20. He is going to take the win in the LMP2 division, and he's done a very, very good job, has Mr. Freiman. He's going to come out of the final chicane very, very shortly. The number 20 will pick up the win. new winner in the LMP2 division, Nathaniel Fryman, takes the spoils of victory at the place where legends are born.
I just realized I was talking about a little bit. Oh, keep an eye on the GTPs, see if they pass the LMP2 cars. If Anthony Barranco doesn't get past there by race winner Anthony Jenkins, he has another lap to go race Fryman. That was so fascinating, the timing of how that worked out. Let's see here at the checkered flag. I want to see how close it was, because Fryman had to run that lap for real. It's not right there, Alex, but I mean, at this moment, what? Barranco's probably, give or take, about 2, maybe 3 seconds behind Fryman with a 3.5-minute lap. I'm curious if Anthony Jenkins kind of tucks back. Not that he's expected to at all, and I wouldn't if I was him, but if he had tucked back and given Barranco one more lap, I don't know. Could we have seen a battle to the finish here in LMP2? Looks like the gap at the line was exactly 2.46 seconds.
Yep, well, that concludes the on-track activities, but it's time for our post-race show here at Le Mans for week 8 out of 12. And let's take you through the results in GTP and LMP2. Anthony Jenkins picks up his 4th win of the series. It's 4 apiece, switching between him and also Brock Morris. Brian Scott and Eduardo Salas round out your top 3. Sasha Andrich behind Brock Morris in 5th, ahead of Jay Davis. Chase Matsko retires on lap 13, and Curtis Kinnicker, with the biggest wreck through Indianapolis, rounds out the 8 finishers. Marshall, why don't you take us through the LMP2 results?
Race winner in LMP2, his first race in the series and his first win. He's batting 100 through 1. Fast Living Motorsports is Nathaniel Fryman, your race winner over my Iron Horse Motorsports team on Monday nights. I believe his debut in the LMP2 category. Now, pardon me, his second race. He had won one prior in the prior LMP2 race. He's also raced this series as a GT3 today, though. P2 for Mr. Anthony Barranco. Lycon Gazzoni, the man who I believe will have led the second most laps in this class on the day in the category, maybe even the most among the LMP2s. He was quick, he was the pole sitter, and unfortunately for him, he'll have to settle for 3rd place. Fastest lap in the race, and pardon me, pole position also did go to Nathaniel Fryman. It was a clean sweep, everything except for hard charger, which goes to P4, Jeremy Eshelman, your championship points leader into the race, and I believe thanks to the fact that, well, his championship rivals didn't have any sort of crazy day for themselves today, I believe he will still have that title coming out of today. It's going to be Gustavo Ferraro, Decio Lima, and Ignacio Arroyo, your next 3. Alexander Berger finishes in P8. Christopher Pugliese finishes in 13 laps down in P9. And Broughton Jones barely got a few laps into this race before he retired in P10. That's your running order for today. Fryman, your winner. Barranco and Lycon Gazzoni, your LMP2 podium.
Right, time to turn our attention to the post-race interview show for the Freedom Motorsport Alliance Prototype Challenge Series Week 8 here at Le Mans. Let's bring in the man who has equalled his chief rival Brock Morris on 4 wins apiece. Anthony Jenkins, winner at Le Mans. How does that feel, buddy?
Guys, I will take that. Hold on a second, let me close this out. Sorry. There we go, now I can hear you. Yes, I will take that. I will take that. That was a really strong race for me. I'm really happy with it.
But I think the real kicker was, okay, sitting stationary in pit lane, 19.88 for you, 22.35 for Brian Scott. You had to make that decisive maneuver, and we saw you nip in front of him in the pit lane. That was crucial for you to keep ahead of him. But also the big thing was, we could see Brian getting ever closer. You could see that dark liveried Porsche in your rear view mirrors. I bet you were like thinking, no, you're not having this one. We're not letting Porsche take the win here at Le Mans.
Yeah, for sure. He was monstrously quick all through practice in qualifying, so I knew that he had pace. Fortunately, I was able to, I practiced my pit entries, so I was strong on those, and was able to just save a little bit more fuel and got the tire strategy right. So I'm really happy with this one.
Now, I've got to ask a little bit of a question. I mean, we've seen you and Brock battle all season long. We've had Brian now, gather pace and was absolutely wicked quick in practice at one point. I think it was 3 seconds quicker than anybody else, yourself included. But is there a little bit of one-upmanship? You got like a little bit of a game being played between you and Brock at the moment for who's going to get the most wins this season?
I think we both really want to win this championship. I know that I do, and I'm pretty sure that he does also. So it's you know, I would have been happy with a P2 as long as Brock was behind me. But once I saw that the win was possible, you know, I figured I'd go after it.
Yeah, and then we go from one very fast circuit to another fast circuit, Anthony. Next week, we go to my home turf, home of British Motor Racing, Silverstone. Caddy could be very, very quick there, can't it?
For sure. Silverstone's a strong circuit for me. It's one of my favorites. So I will hopefully be able to deliver a win.
Well done, Anthony. Another win in the pocket here at Le Mans. Before we let you go, buddy, anyone you want to give a shout out to?
You guys for the broadcast. It's a lot of fun every week. Brian for delivering a heck of a race. Pushed me the whole way. And my wife for, you know, putting up with this nonsense.
Brilliant. Well, Anthony, thanks so much for taking time out of your evening to spend with us here at FMA Prototype Challenge Series. We'll see you next week for week 9 at Silverstone. Congrats on the win tonight.
I appreciate it, guys. Have a good night.
And from Anthony Jenkins, we now move on to our next driver. He put up a hell of a fight, led 2/3 of this race, and he brought it to Anthony Jenkins. Joining Marshall Crocker, he's with our runner-up Brian Scott in the 85 Porsche.
Mr. Brian
How's it
Scott, what a drive there from you, my man. We see basically weekly on Thursday nights a battle to the finish with Anthony Jenkins. Usually it's Brock Morris. Tonight, though, you did the Porsche contingent. Proud. Let's talk about first, before we get to your battle. You were almost 3 seconds to the good pre-race and practice. What is it about Le Mans that just clicks so well with you on raw pace?
It's just one of my favorite tracks on here. I probably have more time in it than just about anything else, except for like maybe Monza.
Well, it clearly showed through in that early pace. So let's get to the battle. You come out of pit road. Clearly a strategy decision maybe broke off there, or was there an issue on pit entry? You come in about a second ahead of Anthony. You come out a second and a half behind. What happened there on that final pit stop?
I took 2 front tires when I probably should have done it on the first stint. So I knew they weren't really going to make it too well. I wanted a little bit of life left in them, but the rears kind of started to fail me towards the end there. Started sliding a little bit more than I wanted to, and got a couple slowdowns from starting to understeer and everything. So that kind of sealed the deal at the end.
Well, it did seem to spell the difference. We saw a couple track limits penalties that you had to serve slowdowns for there throughout that final stint. What lap did you kind of feel like it became out of hand? Because when you're that fast pre-race and practice, I assume you thought, okay, if I can get it all together, I got a chance to catch him even 3-4 seconds back. When did you kind of know, okay, this one's getting out of control?
Yeah, it was right towards the end. When I hit that first slowdown, I knew it was kind of over with. And I kept inching closer, and then it was... Then another little mistake here and one there, trying to just push a little bit too hard. You know, like coming down the Mulsanne through that second chicane. I got a little bit too close to him. Just, I think just in that dirty air or something, just kind of messed with my braking zone on it.
I don't mean to speak at all for Alex, but I think in the season opener when we started all the way back at Daytona, when you had the pace of the field, you and Brock Morris were really in a class of your own there, and then we just haven't seen you quite as much throughout the course of the season full time. When you race, you're always quick. What's the rest of your schedule looking like as we go to another historic circuit like Silverstone and the rest of the calendar going forward? Are we going to see you become the first non-Cadillac to win a race on Thursday nights? Because somebody's got to do it, and you would be my pick if you can make the races.
Yeah, it's just been a work schedule issue. We've been working tons of overtime, so sometimes I have time to race, sometimes not. My truck's been in the shop. I had an injection pump go out on my truck, so I've been trying to work more hours to kind of ease that bill out. So, yeah, it's just sometimes I can make it, sometimes I can't. It's unfortunate because these races have been really good.
Any final, shout-outs, any thanks, anybody you want to mention at home?
Just shout out to Anthony for a good race and everybody else in here, man. And you guys do an awesome broadcast. I usually end up watching it throughout the week if I can't make it.
I really appreciate it. That always means a lot. We're glad you guys enjoy them, and thank you on behalf of yourself and Anthony Jenkins for putting on there. I'd say the barn burner of the season, but in the GTP class this year, that has too much competition. So definitely top 5, and that's a very, very high praise top 5. Great race tonight, Brian. Congratulations on a hard-earned P2, and I hope we'll see you again next week.
All right, man. Thank you, guys.
Well, a big thank you there to our runner-up in the GTP class, led 2/3 of the race, but we've got a new winner to speak to tonight. Nathaniel Fryman, LMP2 victory at Le Mans. You got a victory lap there, my friend, but congratulations. You put a move on Anthony, and there you go. You seal the deal.
Yeah, no, it was definitely a little weird having that extra lap kind of by myself, but it was kind of nice because I got to kind of realize what had just happened and that I actually just won the race. So it was awesome.
It was quite funny because I kind of classed it as a victory lap that you ended up going on. You know, like everyone else were like thinking, okay, well, done the race, I'm in the pits. Yeah, that's it. Le Mans is over, and you just had an additional 13.6 kilometers to just sort of let it, let it all take in and sort of like realize what happened. But that maneuver that you pulled on Anthony heading into Mulsanne corner was just absolutely mighty. You just decided, you know what, I could kind of see that it was a make or break for you at that point.
No, absolutely. I mean, we were coming to the last lap, or that could have been the last lap. And he made a mistake out of that second bus stop chicane on the back stretch, and I had to run, and I had to do something with it. I wasn't just going to sit behind him. So just kind of stuck it out there and hoped he backed out, and he ended up backing out, which was ideal, and just had to run away and hold on to it.
Now we normally see you on the Monday nights with regards to the GT3 side of things, but how's the step up been going into an LMP2, and especially at such a fearsome track like here at Le Mans?
Oh, it's a ton of fun. I honestly enjoy prototype racing so much. So being able to finally race in this series was very exciting. And you know, it's very different from GT3, so having the GT3 experience to kind of know what the track feels like at the slower speed to then hop into an LMP2 is definitely a big adjustment, but it's definitely doable. And obviously tonight I was able to showcase that I can drive an LMP2 as well.
Well, listen, it's a very, very challenging track, so I'm sure you're definitely requiring some rehydration after what has been a tiring 65 minutes or so. But before we let you go, Nathaniel, congratulations on the win. Anyone you want to give a shout out to?
Yeah, I'd love to shout out Ball State Esports. They've been able to teach me and coach me into becoming as fast as I am right now. Shout out my friends and family and my girlfriend for always supporting me through all the sim racing and esports that I do.
Brilliant. Congratulations, Nathaniel. Hopefully, what's the best way, rather than sort of giving you the full name nomenclature with the first name? Is it Nathan, Nathaniel? What do you prefer for future reference?
I go by the full Nathaniel, but you can just call me Fryman. My last name's much easier to say.
There we go. No worries. Nathaniel Fryman, thank you so much for joining us. Hopefully we'll see you in some of the races coming up over the schedule for the FMA Prototype Challenge Series, but well done tonight.
Thank you, guys. Have a good night.
It's always good to actually, just in case, ask, because you never know what they might say. But at least Nathaniel was very, very honest on that front.
I've raced him for a while. I never thought to ask. It's a great point. That's a life lesson learned there from Alex Goldschmidt. I never would have thought to ask.
Yeah, but last but by certainly no means least, he's been with us in the interview booth before, and he's joining Marshall Crocker right now. Anthony Barranco joins him.
It's everybody's favorite conflict of interest. Me interviewing my teammate Anthony Barranco joins us in the broadcast booth after another barn burner here on Thursday nights. Anthony, you come over, you've made a couple spot appearances, one's in the GT3s and since in the LMP2s. You only seem to have fun battles. Talk us through that last lap with Nathaniel Fryman and what happened there in Mulsanne that he got you.
Oh, I had a bad run out of the second Mulsanne chicane. And and had I made it to that last lap, he had enough fuel to make it. I only had 0.8 laps of fuel remaining, so he deserved it. I mean, if it wasn't for his early spin and then the entire second stint fighting with that other GTP car that was off pace, he would have caught me a long time before that. But yeah, I was aiming for a podium when I saw how fast Gazzoni and Fryman were. I was like, let's just try and get the last spot on the podium, and we did that and then some.
Now, talk a little bit about what it's like in a car that I know you're still getting relatively up to terms with the LMP2 car. Does it get much harder than Le Mans? How hard was it to deal with an infamously long, infamously technical circuit just from an individual driver's perspective?
Well, I haven't driven Le Mans in a long time, and I don't know, it's just with the car's like systems, the only corner that was really like messing with me that I was being probably a little too conservative in, just because I don't have the experience with the car, was Indianapolis. I just did not like committing to the brakes before going around that corner, so I was lifting off really early and then braking after we got past the kink. But other than that, I mean, the car just kind of just sticks to the road with the downforce. You just got to be careful in those chicanes to end the lap and begin the lap, and it's not too bad.
Well, you're heading to Alex Goldschmidt's side of the pond once again here next week. We're heading to Silverstone for a doubleheader on Monday and Thursday, a rare back-to-back here in FMA. We go there on Monday in the GT3. It's going to be a rain race there, and then we come back in the dry on Thursday. Silverstone, what are you thinking? Historic circuit, you're pretty familiar with it. What's your feeling going into 2 races of that next week?
Well, if they're running the same track in the same week, I can, unless life happens, that'll definitely draw me out for sure. I haven't driven Silverstone in a long time as well, so good thing the more challenging one is on Monday.
And in advance, we just talked quickly about the need to hydrate and grab electrolytes. How much sweat, how much are you needing to prepare for rehydration and all the stress of driving in the rain on Monday? Where's the stress at for that? Because I'll tell you, I'm pretty worried. It's gonna be an interesting one.
Well, I haven't driven in practice yet, so I don't know how bad the conditions are. But what I found in go-karting when driving in the rain, it's you're not driving at that max pace. It just takes a lot of attention, but physically it's not too demanding. So physically, I think it'll be fine. It's just the concentration level being smooth.
All right, well, I'm going to sweat a hole through my seat. So clearly we're different drivers. We have very different styles then, but sounds great. Great drive today, Anthony. Come home for a P2, and it doesn't get much more of a barn burner, of a nail biter than the way it ended with Nathaniel. Anybody want to shout out? Anybody want to thank at home as we wrap up tonight?
Hey, yeah, well, let's shout out the LMP2 field. It was a great race. That beginning set portion where we were all going into the first Mulsanne chicane with there was 5 or 6 of us. That was pretty spicy, and then great racing up at the front. But did Gazzoni take tires and spin? Is that how he ended up behind me after
more
the first
or less?
stop?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I didn't take tires the entire race, and I set my fastest lap on the second to last lap of the race. So tires were fine. I just wasn't risking tires for that reason.
Always a pleasure, Anthony. I'll look forward to talking to you on Monday, and yeah, hopefully you're back next week, because you've been a blast to watch here in this series since you've come back. And Mike on Gazzoni, we thought he was kind of picking it up. We thought he might dominate with how much pace he had middle of the season. You and Nathaniel are keeping him on his P's and Q's. So we thank you for joining. We hope to see you again.
Yeah, shout out to Rebellion too. I was at Le Mans in 2019 when they ran this livery, so that's why I ran that one tonight.
Very cool stuff. There you go. Our resident historian Alex Goldschmidt probably remembers every livery run in the 2019 Le Mans. I don't mean to speak for him, but our resident racing encyclopedia. I one of these days we got to do a test live on air. We're gonna throw up paint schemes there for you.
Oh damn!
And you can ID them. Thanks, Anthony, as always.
Yep. Later, guys. Good night.
Cheers, Anthony. Throw me under the bus, why don't you, Marshall?
I'm just saying, I think some of the breadth of knowledge you pull out, I thought before I came into the series, I'm a pretty well-versed guy on racing. I love the sport, I love the history, and man, some of the things you and other drivers in this series know, you've probably forgotten more than I'll ever hope to know.
At least the good thing is that one of the contacts in my phone, smartphone book, happens to be a man who's won the Le Mans 24 Hours 3 times, none other than the man who partnered Benoit Trullier, and now Genesis Magma Racing hypercar driver Andre Lotterer, Marcel Fessler. Very, very good friend. Who, funnily enough, I was catching up with last week at Porsche Sports Cup Suisse at Monza. But on that note, that's it from us here at Race at Exus, as week 8 is done and dusted. One more quartet of races still to go. Silverstone next week, then Imola, Sebring, and on June 4th, it's the double points season finale at the Glen on June 4th. A big thank you to everyone that has been watching along with us here at the Le Mans circuit, the Circuit de la Sarthe in Pays de la Loire in Le Mans. You've been in the company of Alex Goldschmidt and Marshall Crocker up here in the Global Broadcast Centre. Le Mans has crowned its legends here in FMA Prototype Challenge Series Folklore, but who will become top of the pops? Head back to Silverstone and to the United Kingdom, the home of British motor racing, and to where the first ever Formula One race was hosted back in 1950. Where can you watch it? Well, you can watch it right here, same place, same time, every week as we get racing. 9:30 p.m. Eastern for the next 4 rounds. All rounds now 60 minutes. Of course, we did have the little sort of séjour over to Spa earlier on in the season, but thank you so much for joining us. Well, it is Jenkins and Fryman that rule the roost here at Le Mans. What's going to happen at the tarmac of hallowed ground at Silverstone next week? You're going to have to wait and join us then. Coming up on Race and Nexus, we've got plenty more racing still to come, including the likes of the following. The Rookie Class Racing ARCA Series will head to Charlotte for Season 3, Week 9. Special Stage Pro Trucks Season 12, Week 5 will head to Long Beach and Phoenix. Then we'll have RCR Rookie Class Racing Truck Series Week 14 at Phoenix. Indianapolis will be the host for Breaking Bad Pushing Limits Season 2, Round 8. And then we will also get the weekend completed with the following 3 races. High Point Racing GT World Challenge Round 2, Season 9 at Sebring. FMA Next Gen Series Week 9 will take place this coming Sunday at New Hampshire. And St. Pete will once again host Apexis as Season 27 of the Mazda Cup continues here on Race and Nexus. Until next time, race hard, race clean, and if in doubt, well, like here at Le Mans, you better go flat out. We'll see you next time.